Add one more name to the long list of Republicans vying for the White House. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie intends to announce a presidential bid tomorrow. We're joined now by political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns from Real Clear Politics and CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris in Washington. Thank you both for being here. Steve, let me just start off with you. Why is Chris Christie running for president? What are going to be the key issues for him?
Well, this is a guy who 4 years ago had Republicans knocking down his door to run for president, and he decided it wasn't the right time to do so. And so I think once you get that bug, you're going to do it. And even though things have sort of gone south for him in the last few years, I think he feels and his supporters feel he has something to say, even though this field is as large as it is. He's going to go out there, and his slogan now is telling it like it is. He's going to talk a lot to voters in town hall style meetings. He's going to basically, be as brash as he's been in New Jersey, but take that to New Hampshire. He'll talk about entitlement reform. He'll talk about education. He'll talk about his successes in terms of keeping taxes or not raising taxes in New Jersey. And he'll talk about national security. And he feels that he's got a conversation he can have with the country on that, and that's what he's going to take to the road.
Caitlin, let me ask you this. Is it possible, you think, at all, that Christie is maybe interested in being vice president here? I mean, that's a possibility that some people have talked about.
There are so many candidates running this time around. Obviously, not all of them are going to make it to the final rounds. The early states and some of the early debates will weed some of those people out. But when you're running, people run for president for a lot of different reasons. Steve mentioned, last time, a lot of people think that Chris Christie's time was last time. And I think a lot of these candidates are thinking, why not me and why not now? There are so many people running. They're seeing vulnerabilities in the perceived frontrunners and in Hillary Clinton. People sometimes eye the vice presidency. They also eye cabinet positions. You have a lot of governors running in their last terms as governor, looking for other opportunities. But the main thing right now is for these candidates to stress that they're in it for this job particularly. You mentioned governors. Let's talk about the other two governors expected to announce bids, Scott Walker and John Kasich. Steve, what are their odds here?
Well, I mean, you have to, and going back to what Caitlin was saying, there's no clear frontrunner here. I think a lot of people thought Jeb Bush was going to jump into this thing and run away with the polls, and nobody's really done that yet. And so everybody who's jumping in feels that they have a shot at this, and everybody has their own story to tell. So a guy like Scott Walker, who's been governor of Wisconsin, has won 3 elections in the last 4 years, including a recall election. He feels that he is a fighter. He's taken on some really big issues in Wisconsin, and he can take that message to Iowa and New Hampshire and say, I'm a conservative. I can talk to social conservatives, but I can also talk to mainstream Republicans and become the nominee of this party and stand up to Hillary Clinton. Kasich, for his part, has been pretty successful governor of Ohio, won re-election by a wide margin. His issue is that he is actually probably a more attractive general election candidate. People within the Republican Party have a lot of questions about Kasich and how conservative he is, but he can claim to have balanced budgets in Washington and in Ohio, and is running on his success as governor of Ohio, which is a big general election state.
Caitlin, let me ask you, we're getting close to the start of the debates here. How do any of these candidates in this already crowded field stand out?
Yeah, the pressure is on to stand out, really. I think you're seeing several of these candidates really trying to position themselves to make some kind of impact on the race. You're seeing people like Carly Fiorina, who just a few weeks ago was at the bottom of the polls, and she's really clawing her way up to those top spots to be featured in that primetime debate. We mentioned John Kasich, who's the sitting governor of Ohio, and as he's polling now, at the bottom of the pack, risks not making that debate stage in his home state of Ohio, where the first debate is. So I think over the next several weeks, you're going to see these candidates positioning themselves to get some media attention and get some attention in the polls.
I want to turn to another issue here, and a question really maybe for both of you. Let's touch on the same-sex marriage ruling and the GOP's response to it. Steve, first of all, how will certain candidates' reactions, you think, affect voters?
Well, it depends. I mean, so you're looking at some of these folks. If you just look at the 12, 13, 14 Republican candidates out there, there's a handful that are still sort of not letting this fight go, even though the court ruled what it ruled on Friday. And they're really pushing this religious liberty argument, saying that they're going to stand their ground and fight against implementation of same-sex marriage. And they're talking to primary voters, especially social conservatives in the Republican Party. So they're really worried about that slice of the primary electorate. The others who have come out with statements basically saying, okay, the court has done what they've done. We don't agree morally with with same-sex marriage, yet the court has had its final say, and we sort of have to follow the rule of law. They're really looking ahead, I think, to the general election and basically looking at where the country is on this issue, which is now a majority of Americans support same-sex marriage, and they're trying to just not have that fight in the general election.
Caitlin, let me just ask you to follow up. I mean, how powerful or critical will those social conservative voters be?
Well, I think in a state like Iowa, there is a very activist base there. So you do have several Republican candidates really catering or, trying to cultivate support to that group of constituents. The problem, though, is that there are several people running in that lane. So you could see a scenario where some of these other candidates might be able to come out on top of that. But, in New Hampshire, it's a little bit of a different story. It's not that activist conservative base. You have some more moderate Republican voters. So those two primary states will be interesting to see, how these candidates position themselves on this issue as a motivating force, as a way to cultivate support, or as something to, see in the rear view and move on to, economics, foreign policy, that kind of thing.
All right, the official candidate list getting longer every day. Governor Christie set for tomorrow. Thank you both. CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris and Caitlin Huey-Burns from Real Clear Politics. Thank you so much.